2 words. Colin Kaepernick. The 49ers starting quarterback, who I did a bid on earlier this week, or should I say last week now, not only threw for 263 yards, but he ran for 181 yards in Saturday's second-round playoff victory over the Green Bay Packers. If you're keeping track, he accounted for 444 of his team's yards. Wow. I said going into the game, I was one of the few people that picked one of the few experts to pick the Niners to win. A lot of the people, whether it be on NFL.com or whether it be on CBS or Fox or even ESPN, they didn't feel that San Francisco had enough at home to hold off Green Bay and to score enough points. And here's what I said. I said the bad turf in Frisco promotes a strong ground game, which the Niners have and the Packers do not. That Aaron Rodgers, the defense for the Packers is, if they don't get turnovers, utterly worthless. Again, I was right. The 49ers proved that. Having the ball for 38 minutes of the 60 minutes in the game and averaging 7.7 yards per play. And I want to also point out that I said that Kaepernick in my earlier show, earlier this past week, that going to him over Alex Smith was the best choice for this team because of his explosiveness, because of his ability to make certain throws that Alex Smith cannot. His accuracy may be a little bit down, but that's only because of his inexperience. I got to say right now, everything I said made sense. Everything I said was right. I was correct. Everyone's like, will Kaepernick be able to live at the moment? I don't think he will. I knew he would. They're at home. They're at home against the crap defense that doesn't stop anybody if they can't get a turnover. This ain't the Green Bay Packers defense that won them the Super Bowl a few years ago against the Steelers. That year they were second in points allowed and in the top 10 in yards allowed. The last 2 years, they may have had, one of the top 5. They may have had the best offense in the year, offense as a team the last 2 years. I mean, you look at what they did the last 2 years. The last 2 years, they've averaged 31 points per game. But they give up 21 and they give up almost 22 points per game. Here's all I'm trying to say. In the NFL nowadays, you can win with offense, and have an average defense. But just remember something. That's not as good as having a good defense and an average offense. Because here's why. What's more likely to happen in a game? An average offense plays well and comes to life? Or an average defense plays well and stops a good offense? The first option is much more likely to happen. And it proved itself tonight. Defense still wins championships. And Green Bay, in 2010, I'm going to give you the numbers that this defense had when they won their Super Bowl. Second in points allowed, 5th in yards allowed, 5th in passing yards, and 18th against the run. Now, 18th is relatively respectable considering in the league nowadays more teams are throwing. But they held 6 teams to single digits. Their 15-1 season last year. Two teams they held to single digits. And this year, 1. Their defense just does not get off the field on third down. Their defense does not make plays it needs to if they can't get turnovers. It's like the Steelers. Ever since that Super Bowl they beat us, neither the Steelers nor the Packers have been able to get off the field. They just get drug up and down the field and then they get tired by the end of the game. Now, this isn't just the case of the Packers defense playing poorly. San Francisco's offense brought their A game tonight. They set a playoff record for their franchise of 579 yards, averaging almost 8 yards per play. They had 3 more offensive drives than the Packers, and they turned the 2 turnovers into 2 touchdowns, and that was a difference in the game. When the 49ers had a chance to make a play, they did. They made all the necessary plays to win. They played a smarter game, and I've said for a long time that Jim Harbaugh is one of the best coaches in this league because he's able to find weaknesses in your defense. He played at the NFL level as a quarterback for a good few years at a high level. The Packers defense had no idea for what the Niners were going to do. They felt that playing Joe Webb last week for the Vikings, who's a running quarterback that can make 1 or 2 throws a game, would help them for Kaepernick. But they might be equal as runners, but Kaepernick is like 10 times the thrower that Webb is. Probably even more one-sided than that. I mean, just watching the way that this Niners offense just took the game over. The offensive line just blew the Packers off the line of scrimmage. I mean, a lot of people felt that Aaron Rodgers would be enough to overcome the deficiency in this Packer team. And I'll tell you what the problem with Green Bay is. They don't have enough around. I've already, blasted the defense enough in this little program here. But I will point to other areas of this team where they need to get better. Their receivers have a habit of dropping balls. Their running game is inconsistent at best. I know they got 100 yards on the ground tonight, 104. But that's because, their offensive line is so bad. Rodgers got sacked 51 times this year, and only got sacked once in this game by Patrick Willis for 9 yards. But he was under so much more pressure than Kaepernick was in the pocket. Kaepernick seemed to have all day to throw. Rodgers was running left and right just to try to get to throw the ball out of bounds so he wouldn't take a sack. It's to the point where that offensive line's in crisis mode. It's so much worse than anything the Steelers have put on the field the last few years, and I've ripped their offensive line. The Packers hit Colin Kaepernick twice in the game. The Niners hit him 3 times. Doesn't seem like a big difference. But if you watched the game and saw how much pressure Rodgers was under in the pocket, it just is this incredible difference. I look at San Francisco right now as being a tough ask for anybody to beat right now. If Kaepernick can play that well, passing and running, and he seems to be smarter than RG3 because he knows when to get out of bounds, it's almost going to be impossible to game plan for that kind of offense. That makes RG3's offense in Washington look like an also-ran. And you still have that defense with those guys in that scheme, with Justin Smith and Aldon Smith, Navarro Bowman, Patrick Willis, Ahmad Brooks, Deshaun Goldson, Dante Whitner, Carlos Rogers. That's a pretty scary ask for anybody to beat them. I mean, you look at the teams that are left in the playoff picture now. Baltimore in the AFC along with Houston and New England. Then in the NFC, you've got Atlanta and Seattle. It's going to be tough for any of those teams to beat Frisco. They're just playing so well right now. And what really impressed me about this game was how well the receivers played, particularly Michael Crabtree. Because even though I've pretty much torn him to shreds on my shows, Mike Wallace is the best receiver that has come out of the 2009 draft. And I'm about to prove that. The 2009 draft saw, I think, 4 or 5 guys go ahead of Wallace. And by 300 yards, he's leading the next closest receiver. That'd be Hakeem Nicks. Michael Crabtree's 4th in his draft class. Crabtree last night hauled in 9 catches for 119 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he's starting to come of age as a wide receiver. He's been in the NFL now for 4 years, and he's starting to make plays. I mean, Frank Gore had a couple nice receptions. Randy Moss, again, you always got a game plan for him, because if you don't leave him single covered and he burns a corner, he's gone. Ted Ginn Jr. is a dangerous returner, and you got Vernon Davis, who's a very, very talented tight end. The weapons for the 49ers are playing better than I gave them credit for. They are better than I thought. And if they keep up this high level, it's going to be tough for anybody to beat them. But I will say that the one thing San Francisco does have to be worried about is, although Kaepernick didn't face much pressure from the Packers in the pocket, Seattle, Baltimore, Houston, New England, they're not going to, maybe Atlanta, they're not going to let him sit back there all day and throw. They're going to spend more blitzes after him, and he's going to see more, I don't want to say variety in the defenses he plays against, because Green Bay just runs a base 3-4. Here's our zone scheme. If you can beat us, you'll beat us. That they don't really mix it up much. Atlanta does a lot. Seattle does it a lot with their corners, particularly. New England does it a lot. Houston does it a lot, and Baltimore does it a lot too. He's not going to see same kind of similar defenses the rest of the way. He's going to see some defenses that are going to mix it up and show him some looks he hasn't seen yet. So that's going to be interesting to see how Kaepernick handles it. But if he does the way he does tonight, I don't see any team beating Frisco. All right, that is the second wrap-up for me. I wrapped up Niners-Packers and Broncos-Ravens. I am 1-1 in divisional weekend so far. Be sure to check back on Sunday night, where I will break down the games from Sunday, which will be Seattle Seahawks at Atlanta Falcons is the early game, and the afternoon game is Houston Texans at New England Patriots. Take care, everybody.